Hey, what's up, hitters? I'm Jeff Gilder. This is Long Drive TV, and today we have Martin Borgmeier on the show. Welcome, Martin. How you doing, man?
Hey man, thanks for having me. How are you?
Oh, great, man. Just enjoying this beautiful sunny weather here in always sunny Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. How about you, man? What's it like in
Well,
Germany?
in Myrtle Beach it is. In Munich we had a couple of good days already, but well, usually during these times it's pretty cold, actually. So I'm very happy to have some proper temperature right now outdoors. It's fine.
That's good. I've been watching some of your videos and your walks through the woods and seen a little bit of snow here and there recently.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. Well, 2 weeks ago it was pretty snowy,
Yeah.
but today and the last week was fine. But I mean, we can't hit outdoors anyways right now. So for me, it doesn't really matter right now.
Yep, that's cool, man. Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for being with us. I want to get into this. Like I said, I've been trolling your YouTube channel, so I've learned a little bit about your history. I know that you've been active in golf and basketball for some time, but when did you get involved in long drive?
Well, actually, I mean, this probably happens to any long driver out there. They play golf and they hit the ball far, right? But at some point, you don't know how far is far, right? Because you outdrive any guy in your group anyway. So is 40 yards further far or 80 or 100? You don't know. So for the very first time I've tried long drive was in 2017, late 2017, where they had the very first German long drive championship in Germany, which was in Cologne. And I bought my first long drive club a couple of months back before that event. And I started to get used to it, to swing it because it was 48 inches, so it spec'd out to the max. And I just tried because I had no idea, right? And there were some professionals out there, some amateurs. There were 120 competitors, which is amazing for a European event, right? And well, I hit the longest ball of the day just like that and came second because I went OB in the final. So that was actually my start to the long drive world. And well, all these guys, obviously the professionals told me, Martin, you have to take this more seriously. And that's what I did. So throughout the winter that followed, I worked my ass off to start on the European Tour. So the Long Drivers European Tour back in the days, which doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I thought, okay, it seems like I do have some potential out there, so better use it, right? So I reached out to my coach, who's still my coach today, Lee Cox, and started working with him. And that was actually interesting because many guys reach out to him, obviously, and in the very first lesson, he does some kind of an assessment, right? And because he's measuring club head speed and ball speed, because he's getting lots of weird data sent, obviously. And after 5 shots, he shook my hand and was like, okay, Martin, you didn't lie to me, so we can start working. So that was actually how I got into long drive.
That's pretty cool. Were you following
Yeah.
someone from Europe in long drive at the time who was someone maybe you looked up to?
Yeah, so obviously the guy who brought long drive to Europe is Joe Miller, right, with his world championship titles in 2010 and 2016. So he was the one guy out there. And he was also at the German long drive championships back in the days in 2017 as a show act. So he was actually doing a long drive show for us. And it was amazing to see him because all I did was I saw him on TV and all these YouTube videos and learned a lot of stuff already. But to meet him in person was obviously a lot of motivation.
Yeah, no kidding. He's an incredible talent and still
Yeah.
is. You know, I mean, that's amazing. So in just 2 years, basically, you went from 0 to number 9 in world rankings with World Long Drive. Is that kind of the path that you thought you were going to go, or how do you feel about that?
Well, it's all a question of priorities, right? At this point, I made a decision when I decided to turn pro, right? And I decided that turning pro doesn't mean that I just try and, well, let's see, let's have an event or two. I decided to treat this professionally, and I basically worked my ass off, right? I try to gather, in the very beginning, I try to gather as much information as I can find out there on the internet, ask so many guys how they do certain things, bought a lot of equipment and just started working. So just to get an idea, I was at my driving range, my local driving range, because I was working full time in IT sales back in the days. During winter, it was 10 o'clock at night. It was minus 10 degrees and snowing, but I had the floodlights on and I was hitting balls, right? So I really wanted to become better. And I really wanted to win an event. And that was my goal actually for the first year, because I had no idea how the competitors are like and how the event's going to be like. I had no idea. So I just started and I wanted to win an event. And it took me 2 events. So I won my second event in Belgium back in the days. And at this point, the latest, it was crystal clear for me that I want to push it to the limit, and I want to use every minute of my life to do so. And well, now it's 2 years later, and I still have a long way to go, because obviously I have my goals are bigger than rank 9 in the world. I think it's a good start, and I think I had a pretty good season, the first season in 2019 on the World Long Drive Tour. But obviously, I'm looking for a little bit of a bigger belt right now.
So quite a bit of pressure for you this year, since the tour is basically eliminated, except for the World Championship and possibly a last chance qualifier, I guess. So getting to that point, you still got to work your ass off, as you said. And from what we're seeing, you certainly have the ball speed to do it. So what's it take to knock off Kyle Berkshire for the World Championship?
Yeah, I mean, having speed is great, right? But we're not playing the fast ball or whatever. We play long drive, right?
Yep.
So we still need to hit the ball far. So we need to convert that speed into distance. So good launch and control your spin and launch depending on the conditions, right? So that's what it's all about. So I think I've figured out how I and my body works, so how I can manage to peak for an event, because that's exactly what I did in the beginning of the year, right? My 231.9 ball in West Palm Beach, it was not like it was coincidence that I was fast that week. I was going to the US to play my first 2 events, right? And that story behind flying out to the US is completely crazy, because I actually couldn't practice outdoors in Munich because it was simply too cold. Like 2 years back, I was grinding at the driving range at minus 10 degrees, right? But minus 10 degrees killed speed. And even if you want things so bad, sometimes it's better to go indoors and hit balls into a screen, because you can simply move better, right? Because it's 20 degrees indoors. And that's what I did. All winter long. And I wanted to see a ball flight before I go out to the US. That's why I went to Turkey, where it was 20 degrees when was it? Like mid-March, I guess. Yeah, it was mid-March. And I was seeing the first ball flights of 2020. And that night, I was supposed to fly back to Munich. I saw the news and I saw that Trump just announced that the US is going to be locked down, right? Or not locked down, but the borders are supposed to close for Europeans. And then I made a pretty quick decision. So I booked the flight for the next day at 8:30 a.m. to fly out to Charlotte and to get to the US somehow, right? I just wanted to get in there and go from there, because I was scared that you guys have events over there and I cannot be part of it because I'm not allowed to fly in, right? Because during those times, things changed every minute. In the morning, you didn't know what's going to happen this night. So I had to make a decision. And once I was flying across the pond, during that flight, things changed again. Basically, all events got canceled. My appointments at Callaway got canceled, as well as their HQ closed. And I decided to fly from Charlotte down to Miami to see Bobby Bradley, and so I could stay with him for a while till I fly back to Germany. And yeah, it was at his shop where I posted that big number, and it didn't come from nowhere, because I was trying to peak for that certain event, for that certain week. and I had 2 days of rest, right? I was on the plane, which is basically a rest day. Yes, it is a travel day, but for your body, it's actually a rest day. And another day the night before, or the day before. So I was planning to be that fast. That this turns out to be a 230 plus ball is pretty good. But I mean, I had that speed before. I was posting 230 balls the week before at my cave as well. But, you know, launch monitors and, well, people, and there's believers and non-believers. And I think till that point, I did it at the shop in West Palm Beach. There were no more non-believers than believers. So let's see.
There you go. So you mentioned Callaway. Let's talk about that. You made an equipment change this year.
Yeah, I did. So actually, it was at the PGA show where I met John from Callaway, and he was like, "Hey, Martin, have you tested our head yet?" And I was like, "No." "Yeah, you should." And I was actually not planning to switch to Callaway because I was okay with my equipment back in the days. I was hitting crank, and there was no reason to change because I had a great season. Everything was fine. Ball speeds were up. Had great smash factors as well, so there was actually no reason to switch. But then I've tested that, and John said we made some adaptations, right? We made some improvements, and we're really going for it this year. So we take things seriously this year. And actually, the number one reason why I've changed is not necessarily the speed. The speed is amazing. I mean, all my 230 balls were with Callaway equipment, but actually the reason was the forgiveness, because I was crazy fast with it. But if you cannot control your ball flight, there's no reason to switch, even if you have like crazy ball speeds, right? But the forgiveness was so incredible for me because I do have a bias to hit balls a little high toe, and that face and that club actually does pretty well with these hits. So they're still crazy fast, and they have great launch and great spin rate. So that was actually the reason. So the speed was there, but it was not the number one reason. Plus, what I really like, but that's more personal preference, I really like when I look down on a club head and it sits just a hair open. I love that. I love that look. And yeah, that was also a reason. So it was not like I got that club and I took a couple of swings and I felt like, okay, let's switch to Callaway. This is amazing. I actually tested over 1,800 balls in total.
Wow.
So both the crank head and the Callaway head combined, right? And I mean, my computer is right in front of me right here. I do have all my hits since December 2019 on this computer. So every single one, every single head, every single shaft, every single ball, everything on there. So I try to be as scientific as possible, but in the end, you have all these numbers, but you still have to like the look of the club when you look down on it and feel comfortable hitting it, right? And the mixture of everything basically resulted in my decision. And at some point, I had to make that decision, and I had to call Lance from Crank Golf and tell him, Lance, I'm sorry, I'm so grateful for everything you did for me over the last couple of years. It's incredible. Your product is incredible, but I had to make a decision and I have to switch. And he was like, okay. I kind of expected that, right? Because he saw some videos obviously as well, and it was obviously not a crank club.
Right.
Yeah. And it was so cool because a couple of days later, I hit that 231.9 ball, and Lance called me and he said, Martin, congratulations. That is amazing.
Oh, that's cool.
Right?
That's very cool.
And
yeah.
that was so cool. And I still love Lance. I still have a very good relationship to him. And that has had nothing to do with the personal relationship, but it was more of a product decision.
Yeah, very cool. So let's talk about the business side of things that's going on with you guys over in Germany. We said we were going to make an announcement today. We're going to hold that to last. But let's talk about your business with Marcel and European Long Drive, and kind of lead us into that and tell us how that's all coming together.
Yeah, so everything actually started in 2018, when there was also one big announcement in 2018, and that was the Long Drivers European Tour is being canceled. So that guy, the owner of the tour, was doing it for 6 years. It was a Spaniard, and the events he did were pretty good from a sports side. So we had proper balls. We had, most of the time, we had good grids and good tee boxes. But the sport itself and the events didn't actually grow that much. And it was not his intention to grow long drive that much in Europe. It was more of keeping it how it is. And that's what he stated, and that's okay. And that was fine. But that day he decided to cancel it, the sport was about to die in Europe, because if there's no events, there's no sport, right?
Exactly.
So a group of guys, plus a lot of players as well, decided to found the European Long Drivers Association, which basically takes care of the rules, of the formats, of the players, and all those sides. And me and Marcel, what we did on top of that, we've built the European Long Drive Games. So our role is actually to market the games, to find amazing locations, and to operate events based on that rule set that the ELDA provides. And that rule set is actually the rule set of the World Long Drive, right? Because our goal now is to prepare people from Europe, players from Europe, to go to the US and compete. So all we do at our events is exactly the same you see out there in the US. And I mean, I've made all these experiences in 2019, and I try to bring as much over to Europe as possible. That's from using the same tee box, so we're hitting off platforms with the same turf, right? Over balls, announcements, formats, rules, everything, right? So I'm in Europe, I am the Mike Ambrose of World Long Drive. So I'm doing all the announcements and stuff, right? And I collect the points and do the scoring. So I do the same announcements. So I do the on deck calls and the on the tee calls and in the hole calls. So all these calls, right? So when people get over to the US to compete, they're not surprised and asking themselves, what the hell is going on right here? Because that's exactly what happened to me when I was playing my first World Long Drive Championship in 2018. I got there and someone was like, Martin Borgmeier, you're on deck. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? I have no idea, right? So I try to keep everything the same so people do not have to think about that stuff once they're over in the US. Because I think and I believe there's so much talent out here in the in Europe that can make it to the US. And we've seen Joe Miller. And now this year, there's James Tate, there's Emil Rosberg, there's Jordan Brooks, there's myself, who are all on TV and did pretty well. So I think Europe plays a major role in long drive.
Absolutely.
And I think we can push that even further, because the more people get used to how to play long drive in the US, the better the chances are they do well over here, over in the US.
Very good. Yeah, that's awesome. It's exciting to see that grow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about LDN and the announcement that we teased about here. Tell us what's going on there, man, how that works.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it actually all started because I get the same questions every day. So people reach out to me mostly on Instagram and ask the same questions. And they're either about, so actually the main question is, how can I hit it further, or how can I swing it faster, right? But then there's also questions about equipment, right? What do you use here and there, and what's available? What would you recommend, and so on and so forth, right? Then people ask me for connecting them to Lee Cox, for example, who's my coach, right? Because they want to be coached. And then there's questions about the events. So where's this event, and when is it, and how can I get there, and blah, blah, and what's the website, and so on and so forth. because sometimes people are being lazy and they don't want to gather the information themselves, right?
Right.
They want to get it from someone. And well, what Marcel and myself basically created is a platform for long drivers, from long drivers and coaches, to grow the sport. That's the whole idea. So what's on there is equipment news and equipment marketplace, because that's also a major thing. So where can these guys get equipment, right? Most of them buy it from eBay, and they have no idea what they actually buy. So an equipment marketplace for used equipment where people can trade. Then there's coaching tips on there, like generic coaching videos. The same for fitness, because that's also a thing people ask me all the time, like, how do you train to get faster, right? Because everybody out there sees these speed sticks and that people use them, and I mean, they're great, but there's more to speed training than just speed sticks. It's one tool in the toolbox, right? It's your screwdriver, but there's a hammer and all other kinds of things that work for speed and that are necessary, right? And then coaching, because all these things are great, but it depends how you and your swing works and how you can adapt that stuff to your swing. So the idea of the platform, which is called the Long Drive Network, is actually to bring people together from all over the world and give them easy access to all the different areas of long drive, from equipment over events to coaching and fitness. And we have 3 amazing guys with us there. So we have Lee Cox as a coach, we have Josh Koch as a coach, and we have John Novosel from Tour Tempo as our speed coach. So all of them are on that website and can give you pointers to your swing or your training regimen or whatever you want to ask. And you can book a lesson with Lee or Josh or John directly from that website. So everything is at one place. And I believe that we can bring the whole world together. So we can bring all the Koreans, actually all Asians, all Koreans, all Japanese people, all the Thais on there, people from South Africa. It's amazing what they do out there with Grid Outlaws, all the Europeans, and a lot of people from the US. And I think with that team up there, and I'm posting stuff myself, what I'm gonna show there is basically everything that I do, right? And I would encourage all other athletes to do the same as well. And you actually get everything you need to know about long drive on that platform.
So one of the
that's
things,
the whole idea.
One of the things I really like about the platform is that it's essentially a social network. So once you become a member there, you've got a profile. You can share your own videos, your own blogs, and that sort of thing. Probably become parts of groups, and that's a really cool concept. What's the?
It's actually.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's actually a mixture of a social network and a board, right? So some pages are more of a board where people post a topic and people can comment on that. But there's also sections that work like a social network. So you post your swing and people can actually comment on that and contribute, right? So the whole platform works exactly the same as Facebook, but based on long drive only.
Yeah, that's cool. What's the website address?
It's longdrivenetwork.com. One word, Long Drive Network.
Awesome. Is it live now?
Yeah. It is already live, but we haven't started to market it yet because we're just doing the very final bits, right? We did get so much content. We didn't expect to get that much content, actually. That's why we thought we were done like a couple of hours ago, but we got so much more content on there, and we're just doing the last bits and structure it, because it's not like you get fitness videos. It's structured in the different areas of mobility, explosive power, strength movements, speed movements, and we need to structure all of that. But we already have our marketing teasers for Instagram Live. We already have them ready.
Cool.
They're not online yet, but we have them ready. And I think it's a matter of hours before we pull the trigger.
That's very cool, man. I appreciate you and all the work that you and Marcel put into that and bringing it to the long drivers. I think that's going to be a huge hit and
Yeah.
something that's very, very much needed right now to, as you said, bring the world together in one place. What an awesome concept to do that for all those things that any long driver getting into the sport needs equipment and coaching and knowledge and to be around other long drivers, you know. So very cool, man.
That's exactly it. And I think there's even more. I mean, these long drive principles, right? The technique we use, for example, but also equipment things are actually, you can actually transfer those to a certain amount to golf, right? And some of the power moves we do absolutely make sense on the golf course, but some don't.
Yeah.
And the coaches we're working with know exactly what you have to do on the golf course and what you shouldn't do on the golf course. So they're going to ask you, do you want to have a long drive lesson, or do you want to improve your golf game, right? Or do you maybe want to do a mixture of both? So the most amazing thing I feel like on that platform is that we have one of the best coaches in the world on that platform, and they actually contribute to the whole site. So they are members themselves, and I've already seen so many great blog posts from them. You will see all of them online. And that goes from the very fundamentals of the long drive game to the very tiny bits of how should I, don't know, cycle my training to peak at a certain time, right? So there's everything on there. It's amazing.
That's great. It's an amazing concept. And folks, it's longdrivenetwork.com. And if you want to follow Martin, you find him very active on Instagram. And I would recommend his YouTube channel as well. There's a lot of really recent, fresh content up there. You can learn a little more about Martin, how he trains, what he does. You've put up some great equipment videos, tips on how you build your long drivers and that kind of things. There's tips on there also about how you train. So if you want to know anything at all about European long drive, Martin Borgmeier, you're going to find it. It's all there. And now
That's
Long
true.
Drive Network. Yeah.
I want to tell you some more things.
Okay.
Because I've seen your video with Kyle, right?
Yeah.
It's a few months back that you did that video, and I think it's amazing. And I think it's amazing that Kyle was so open to share all his training regimens, right, and like how he practices, how he tries to peak. And I think what people did over the last year is they try to copy things that do not necessarily make sense for them.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm a little bit looking at the direction of the rocking move, and I don't know if anyone's grown a beard yet or grew his hair just to get faster ball speeds. I have no idea. But my point is that rocking move is amazing for Kyle.
Yep.
And it might work for one or the other guy out there, definitely. But everything, also how you peak, the training you do and so on, is so individual, right? I can share with you how I do it because I do it a little bit differently to peak. So before I have an event, I always have 2 days off, 2 complete days off. And I do have a very hard week the time before. So what I do is the week before, actually, I try to go through the week I'm planning to have at an extreme. So on my first day, for example, I hit 80 balls at full speed. I mean, leading up to that, obviously, I warm up and stuff, right? But 80 balls, just pure speed, full speed on day 1. On day 2, I do the same thing, but with 150 balls, and followed by 150 balls of technique swings. So most of the time I do those with irons, actually, but that's day 2. It's a very hard day 2. On day 3, I hit a little bit less balls, so that's roughly 40 balls. Sometimes I do 30, sometimes I do 50, depending on how I feel like. And sometimes if my first 30 balls are not that good, I just try to want to add 20, right? But I keep my volume pretty low, right? And on day 4, again, I increase that volume a little bit and hit another 80 at full speed. So all of them are full speed, and that's 4 days in a row. And then I take 2 complete days off before I go into the competition. Because actually what I try to simulate the week before is how I cycle through the week, because day 2 usually during our events is a lot of hitting, right? So we play round 2 and round 3, and we send 80 balls those days, because we play 40 balls a set, or we did last year. This year is a little bit different because it's 6 balls only, but it's still a lot of hitting. And I basically try to simulate that and then give my body some time to recover. And I usually need 2 days, 1.5 to 2 days, and before events I always take 2 entire days off and then go into the event. And what I've figured, I've tried this a lot of times, is that I can actually be my fastest on day 1 and day 2, and I can stretch it a little bit depending on how much rest I got to day 3 and day 4 as well. So that's a little bit different to what Kyle did, and so he stated that he's his fastest on day 5, so he's trying to lead up to that point. And I've tried that, and that doesn't work for me. Yeah. My body is just completely knackered on day 5. It does not work for me. I cannot do it. And the message is not what Kyle did is wrong. No, it's perfectly right. He's world champion. How could I tell anything that Kyle did is wrong? No, absolutely not. But my message is everyone is a little different, and you have to figure out what works for your body and how you can push and treat your body and how you cannot, right? This is what I figured out that works for me. Kyle figured out what works for him. And there's 7 billion other people out there, and there's something different that might work for them. And you simply have to try, and the best is to get a coach and test different things. And that takes a little bit of time. There's no magic pill, right? It takes time, dedication, and endurance to do it. And, well, maybe in 6 months when we talk again, I tell you something new. Maybe I've figured out that this is actually not the best for me. It's something different, right? But that's what I stick with right now. So, and bodies change as well. I probably don't do the same when I'm 50 years old, right? So I think it's so important because our sport is so individual. Same as it counts for equipment. There's not one shaft. I mean, it's probably coincidence that Kyle and myself play the same flex, because we might have a pretty much the same loading and unloading pattern. Might be, right? This shaft from Patterson Shaft is amazing, but they have all different kinds of shafts for different loading and unloading patterns. Because if the same shaft would be amazing for everyone, why is there so many shafts out there? Why do we do club fittings? Doesn't make sense, right? So my message is everything in this sport is so individual, right? You need to test it, and it takes time and patience to find it out, right? It's not like you actually need to dig into the sport a little bit and learn a lot about yourself as well to become a world champion. That's what I believe, and that's what Kyle did, and it's amazing that he shared it. But is it for everyone? Probably not. Is it for everyone what I just stated? Probably not. Find it out.
There you go. Good stuff. Martin, thanks so much for taking some time to be with us. It's greatly appreciated. And folks, get out there and check out longdrivenetwork.com. Get signed up, be a member, and support that. That's an awesome, awesome thing. And we look forward to talking to you again sometime soon in the future. And best of luck on your season.
Hopefully with a belt. Thanks, Jeff.
There you go,
man.
Have
a good one.
Take care, Brian.
Cheers,